Hello and welcome back to Unstoppable. I'm your host, Kerwin Ray, and today we go Top Gun. I sit down with Christian Bukukis, also known as Boo. He was not the one who flew with Maverick, but he did fly with the Mavericks. He is not your everyday human being. So not only did he fly with the Australian Air Force for a number of years, he is today a high-performance coach and the director of performance training company Afterburner, where they show businesses, we actually worked with these guys, how they actually have an Air Force mission completion rate of 98%, and also how he started an incredible business from Afghanistan. If you've ever wanted to get inside the mind of an Air Force fighter pilot that work at a very high level that have converted to the strategic side of business, this is an interview you want to get inside of. Listen up, get your Top Gun out, and the highway to the danger zone. Listen up. Ladies and gentlemen, it is an absolute honour and welcome to the podcast. Christian
Bukukis, mate.
There we fucking go. Boo, great to have you here.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Mate, it's
Thanks
always
for having
a pleasure.
me.
Oh,
Thank you
mate,
for having
honestly,
me.
I feel like you're my very own Maverick.
Well, I'd like to be someone's Maverick, so if I'm yours, that makes me full of joy.
And I hope I'm your Iceman. Like, because, you know, every Maverick needs an
Between
Iceman.
Iceman and Goose. I can't decide. But
And so for everyone listening to this, playing at home, tell everyone a little bit about your story. What's the Boo story?
pretty interesting. I wasn't very good at school, and I guess I was the skinny Greek kid, and but always just had a passion.
That's an oxymoron right there.
For
a
flying.
skinny Greek kid.
Yeah.
You don't. We don't often hear that.
Doesn't have, when you're little,
Yeah.
that's how you start.
Oh, right. Is that how they all start?
The size comes later.
Right.
So I went to high school, wasn't very academic. I guess I love sport, love being busy. I just love doing things, but I wasn't very good at sitting down and pontificating and getting into the whole behavioural type of learning that they had at school. So, but one thing I just loved I can remember having clear thoughts was flying in the sky, and I just read volumes and volumes of books on World War II and aviation and just flying, being like a bird, like man, just being up there amongst the clouds, and I was just passionate about it. And so along the way, I learned as much as I could about airplanes. I left school the first time, didn't do very well, so I had to go back again and did my last year again. Didn't do very well the second time, but I was really, I had applied to the Air Force the first time. They knocked me back, and all I studied for was because I wanted to be a fighter pilot. And they accepted me to be a pilot when I was just turned 19 years of age, started my pilot training, managed to sneak through the process.
Pause. Okay. Is there like a cinema outing that's missing from this conversation somewhere where, I went to the cinema and I saw this movie, Top Gun, and it changed everying?
Yeah, we don't like to talk about
we don't like to talk, right, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Unfortunately, some people think it's a documentary about fighter pilots. But it is, in fact, a movie.
All right.
So, no, that was obviously pretty inspiring when I was young.
Did it actually play a role? Like, did it inspire you in any way?
No, I don't think so. I think I was already passionate. Like, I think I was
right.
reading books about World War II pilots when I was 7.
Okay.
And I think seeing Top Gun probably just reinforced it for me. And look, to be honest, I was happy to fly a helicopter, happy to fly anything. But I think that movie sort of galvanized for me, the speed and the physicality of the environment. Like, I just seeing the right.
It made it very sexy.
Yeah, it did.
And it made it very cool.
I mean,
I wouldn't be surprised if the US Air Force actually funded that movie, because I'm pretty sure the subscription rates into the Air Force after that would have gone through the roof.
I think that's why they've got another one coming out.
Yeah,
It's
right.
obviously not going to be as good, but similar thing. Pilot numbers are down. So they need to get a few more on board, so why not roll out
Top Gun 2.
It's about drones, I think, so it's not really got the same.
It's not going to be the same.
Got to have the humans there. So I joined the Air Force. My life's been full of luck. A lot of things have happened on the way which just shouldn't have happened. And one of those was when I went for my eye test.
Right.
And I was short-sighted. But the guy who was doing my eye test before selection was drunk. And he was probably 80 years old.
Are you serious?
It was 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I think he had a few sherries.
Right.
And he said to me, look, how badly do you want this? And I said to him, look, this is the thing I want more than anything
Bad
in the
enough
world.
to commit fraud on an eye test.
And he said, look, you're mildly short-sighted.
Yeah.
You're actually not at the benchmark, but
Yeah,
I'll sign you up as if you've got perfect vision. But when you join up, make sure you go get another eye test and get a pair of glasses.
Yeah, right.
So that was probably the first time I realised that luck and intent are joined together.
Yep.
And I guess if I didn't articulate at that point in time how passionate I was and how focused I was to be a fighter pilot, I probably would have given him the excuse to not nudge me through the door. So that pretty much is the story of my life. So we fly for 2 years. And as you can imagine, as a 19-year-old, flying your own even prop aircraft around at that point in time.
That's better than being 26 and getting your first Ferrari. I just got to say, like, imagine, because we're talking like a 23
19 years old, paid $45,000 a year in $1990
to drive a
PC9, 500 kilometers per hour.
But how much does it cost to build a PC9 to buy one?
About $8 million.
Oh, yeah, that's a little bit more than a Ferrari.
Yeah, So that was, I mean, it was just heaven.
That's all right. I can just hear it when he's talking about it.
It's a bit more like, it's not very sexy. So,
yeah, right.
When you're flying a prop. So I flew those and successfully graduated through pilot's course. It's a bit of pilot's course is very hard. I mean, we started with about 38 and we graduated 20. And of that 20, only 5 of us managed to complete all the courses to get through
I love
jets.
that. I love that.
So it was hard and it was very much... The good thing about being 19, 20 is you're completely focused. There's no distractions. Everything is about achieving the goal of becoming
Had you not discovered
pilot.
women at this point?
Oh, yeah, but that all...
Just checking.
It comes...
Right.
That's not an issue.
Okay.
When you're 19 and paid and flying aircraft for a living.
I suppose picking up a woman with chick on a Friday night would not be difficult when that's your resume.
Some elements of Top Gun are a documentary.
You never close your eyes.
So I did that and then came and started flying Hornets when I was 21 years of age. And that was a real beast. And again, another defining moment for me was the day I went solo. There was a big thunderstorm system coming through the base, and I managed to get airborne. And just as I got airborne, they closed the base. So for an hour, I was the only fighter pilot in the whole of Australia just flying amongst thunderclouds on my first solo in an F-18 Hornet. It was amazing. It was one of those moments that just your skin's tingling the whole time. And then I came back to land. The cloud was really low. And you could just imagine, it's almost like you could hear your jet reverberating off the ground and the clouds as you came into land. And as I landed, there was lightning and thunder going off everywhere. And it was almost like it was a message from someone to say,
you were thunderstruck. You've done something. The gods
exactly right. And then that was 9 years of flying fighter aircraft, and from that point in time, diagnosed with a medical condition at that point in time when I was 30.
Which is called, if you don't know,
ankylosing spondylitis,
which is incredibly rare.
Yeah,
it's very rare. But what's interesting is, remember I told you this. My brother actually has exactly the same thing.
Yeah. But it's an interesting condition. It's something where it's very painful, and flying jets is high G, physical, sort of wears you down. But I think as I've grown older, I've learned to manage that condition much better, and through better diet and mental positive thinking, you actually can get a bigger control on it. Now I feel fantastic compared to back then. But as you could imagine, it's 30 years old is not a bad time to have to rethink your career, but at the same time, it's
like you've done 11. You've done 11 years at this point.
Yeah, all up. That's right.
Yeah, you'd spent plenty of time. But at 30,
fairly institutionalized.
Yeah, relatively, but not so far gone that you can't be rehabilitated.
No, that's right. Yeah. So, and that's when I decided I needed to move into something. I didn't fly in combat when I was in the Air Force, and I felt like that was something I missed, and I should have done that to be a true professional.
Yeah.
So instead of doing combat in an aircraft, I just jumped on a plane and moved to Afghanistan and set up a business, working for...
you really did want to see a war zone.
Yeah, well, it was just...
most people don't even want to get sent there for the job, but literally, okay, I'll leave my job, but then I'll actually go there as a civic contractor.
Yeah, well, as I said to you, I wasn't very literate or academic. I love books, but I didn't love structured learning.
Yeah.
And at the time I thought, what am I going to do? How am I going to learn about business? So I went to the newsagent and got a book which is like how to start your first business for dummies, and it was super, super thick. So I think I got to about 4 pages in, and my eyes glazed over. But I remember it just said one thing though. It said, if you're going to start your first business and you've got no idea what you're doing, you've got to do something where the demand is much greater than the supply. And at that point in time, for retired fighter pilots or anyone with a military background, there was 2 places, Iraq or Afghanistan. So I thought, well, if I go there, and I did it with one of my very, very best friends, we set up together. We thought, if we go there, we'll make it happen. And that's what happened. And within 3 years, we had 1,600 staff. And today, that's the second biggest humanitarian support company in the world. We sold it 3 years in.
Yep.
We just made it happen, and it was an incredible experience.
So I'm curious now, because you've taken, to build what you built in civilian land, you've taken a lot of the principles from the Air Force, which is really interesting. So I'm curious to know, we'll dive into it in a minute, but one of the things that really fascinated me about you, but also about your background and Air Force aviation in the first place, is you guys have such an incredibly high rate of success when it comes to completing missions. Now, obviously, whenever a plane goes up, there's always a mission objective. Whenever a team is dropped in, whether it be special forces or otherwise, there's always a mission objective. But also in life, oftentimes we have a mission objective, and sometimes it's a short mission. Okay, I need to get to the shops and get milk and come home. And sometimes it's more commercial. I'm trying to grow a business in 5 years, 10 years. So what I'm curious to know is a 98% level of success rate for completing missions. When you look at military in general, that's pretty unheard of, right?
It's interesting. It's unheard of, I guess, for people that haven't flown in that environment.
Yep.
But when you know what you're doing and when you understand the sort of methodology that I talk about, it's very easy to hit a 98% success rate. We don't hit a 98% success rate on far-reaching, highly imaginative, crazy goals. And that's right. A key part of being successful.
Yep.
Is setting a realistic goal in the first place.
Yep.
And setting a mission objective that you know you're going to succeed at.
Yep.
And then the 2% is just the things you have no control
Variables,
over. Yeah. You can't do anything about them, but you can certainly come back tomorrow and complete the mission.
Look, I think you're underplaying it a little bit, because even special forces and even regular army or regular navy, they have their missions as well, but they still, and which in many cases would be considered exactly the same, realistic. But there's clearly something that the Air Force boys that you guys are doing that's very different to the rest, that enables you to have such a high rate of success.
I think we're one of the few disciplines in the military where the officers go to war.
Yep.
And our troops stay home. And it's very unusual to have that strategic mindset also as a tactician. So we've always had a slightly different ethos and mentality to when we go to war. Most of the military planning processes now, whether you're Army, Navy or Air Force, they're all developed off the back of fighter pilot planning.
Yep.
And what we learned was we've learned that unlike a lot of other disciplines, every time the wheels go up inside an aircraft, you're dealing in a consequence of death environment.
Yep.
All the time.
Yep.
Not just in combat, that's just the ultimate manifestation of it. But the aircraft are very complex. They've got roaring hot engines at the back of them. They've got thousands of moving parts, hydraulic fluids. There's a lot that has gone wrong in aviation. It's a lot better now. But where we really earned our stripes as fighter pilots was during the 60s and 70s, when very complex machinery was being utilized in the Vietnam War, Korean War, and the loss rates relative to the size of investment were completely out of proportion.
Yeah, right. And I think it's really interesting to note, one of the reasons you guys became so good at your planning and execution is because there was such high risk, not just in, active warfare, but just in going to work, which is, taking off and flying in a plane. Whereas most people, if they don't do a good job at work, or if they don't, happen to cross every T and dot every I, they're not going to fucking die. But the consequence for you in the Air Force is if you don't do your job to the highest level, even when you're practicing, even when you're parking the car, there could be a fatal error.
That's right. You don't bump the fender.
Which is what's interesting. And I think one of the reasons people suck so badly when it comes to execution is because in many cases the risk is so low, or the tolerance of risk is too high. And would you agree, like in the Air Force space, the tolerance of risk is like, because it's a high risk environment. So you've got to be able to tolerate risk, but the toleration of failure is ridiculously low. Would you agree with that?
I agree, but I think it also just plays to the human condition. I think humans are very resilient.
Yep.
So ultimately, whether we're in a good environment or a bad environment, we're fundamentally designed to adapt to that environment. So therefore, the consequence of winning or losing, we sort of know we're going to adapt to it anyway.
Yep.
So it doesn't matter. Whereas people say to me, you took the principles from the Air Force and you applied them to business. I didn't do that. I went into business and I just that was the only thing I knew.
Yeah, right.
So by default, I just applied what I knew in my culture, and it equaled 3 successful businesses, and we keep going.
Yeah.
And even to the point where I don't read books about business. All I do is execute every day and learn something every day and apply it tomorrow. I've built a hotel. I've built a business in Afghanistan. I've just bought a publishing company, and everyone said, magazines, they're over. We've already doubled our social media in 6 weeks. We've increased our subscriber base for the first time in 3 years. You just have to learn. You have to try things. You have to fail at things. You have to learn from them and apply that lesson the very next day. I'm still not very good at school, but still managing to get things done.
But what you're good at is the fundamentals of execution.
That's right. And it's the thing people are least interested in.
Yep.
It is not exciting.
It's not sexy.
It's not sexy.
Yeah.
But, the same thing that fighter pilots used to not hit the ground when we didn't want to save our lives, the benefit of that, which we didn't even realize, was our performance went through the roof.
Yeah, right.
And it just reinforces that the day-to-day, the mundane things, if we do them properly and we do it in a way that actually can invigorate a team,
Yep.
so we make a boring thing that little bit more interesting, we achieve things that we would be surprised at what we are capable of achieving.
So would you put it down to your is it the planning? Is it the debriefing? Is it a combination of both? Or, in your words, is it in some cases a little bit of luck as well?
There is luck, but if you're not lucky the first time, you might be lucky the second time or the third time. But if you're unable to be focused on one thing and keep going until the luck happens,
Yeah.
then you'll always be unlucky. So the first thing is to create the focus. Once you create the focus, then the key part is the debriefing element, because that's where we test our plan and work as a team and have the ability to be sympathetic to everyone's mistakes, allow everyone to learn from them, and just one little brick at a time, well, the relentless game of inches, you eventually get there. And you know what the reality for me about success is, when you're really successful, it doesn't feel like success. You just reach the destination and it's quite anticlimactic.
It is. Because it almost feels like, well, is it? I was expecting a parade.
We're there. Yeah, that's it.
I was expecting, maybe there's a high, but maybe that high was only there for 2 minutes instead of 20 years.
And there's definitely a high between imagining that you were going to do something and then something which never happens comes out of the blue and you're successful the next day.
Yeah,
that would give you a high, but it doesn't exist.
Yeah, okay. So let's look at this, because again, I love the fundamentals of what you do. For those people who don't know, we actually hired you. You came in and you taught us your planning and your debriefing process. We brought you in for our K2 Elites, in Queenstown, and you delivered an incredible, immersion implementation training with 200 of our guys, which is a difficult challenge in itself. So let's get maybe into some of the nuts and bolts of 98% success rate. In an environment where we have 95% of businesses that fail in the first 5 years, 1.8%, if we're lucky, survive the 10-year mark, which means there's like a 98% success failure rate of mission objectives.
Well, take it away from business. Only 8% of people manage to achieve their biggest commitment of the year, their New Year's resolution.
8%.
Only 8% get there. Yeah. So let's not even think about in our own lives, when there's something we really care about, we still struggle to do it. So for me, it's not the vision and the ideas that are fundamental to being successful. It's the little tiny stepping stones that we build to achieve that ultimate destination.
So when so many people know that they suck so badly at succeeding, whether it be in life or in business or in whatever pursuit they're after, why do you think so few people actually try to do things differently? What do you think is preventing people from becoming better when it comes to planning, when it comes to execution, when it comes to the critical importance of debriefing and feedback?
There's two things. I think one thing is we're not sure how to create an objective that we can measure, and we get too attached to the target. And I've never met anyone who's been able to tell the future before. Yep. So it's to understand that performance for us, again, and for me, I'm not too concerned about the target. All I'm concerned about is the gap between where I want to be and where I am now.
That's a great distinction.
The gap is important.
Yeah.
And if you live by understanding the gap, then you can change plans and get to where you want to get to. Execution has to be fundamentally simple to execute. If there's already enough going on, if we can't just basically get from A to B, then we won't get there. So if you look at execution, if that's a big gap, it just needs more time or more resources. If it's a start of my business, I don't have a lot of resources. So maybe I just need a bit more time. And one of the challenges in a startup business is people invest too heavily too early. Too much marketing and too much expense without the patience of allowing that to take effect. And I only know that because that's what I've done.
Yeah.
And it's very scary when you get to 6 months in and you're like, oh my gosh, all this money's out. So time is important. And debriefing is the ability to maintain patience. So Matt, do you want to maybe deconstruct debriefing a little bit?
Yeah, sure.
So debriefing is the exploration of the gap. Careful how you say that. But
that's what she said. Now, before we go into this, I just want to create some priming around how critically valuable and important this process is. Like, we debrief, all of our departments debrief on a weekly, use the exact process that Boo, you came in and you taught us. Because again, I'm a military fucking nut. Like, I love anything that involves high stress, high risk, high levels of execution and composure that's required to succeed. And, I think the military can give us some awesome insights, not on just composure and stress and planning, but also, on stress resilience. So we do this on every department, every single week. Every department has their department meetings.
And look how big your office is now.
I know, right? It's at least 10 meters bigger. It's had its own consequences and implications, but we also do it every month in all of our monthly departmental plannings, and then we do it in every month in our business plannings, and in every quarter and every annual. So this is something, by the way, I'm not just putting this up there because you're a nice guy and you wrote a book and you do cool stuff. I'm putting this up there because what you're about to share with people fundamentally fucking works, and it's incredibly powerful when it's used. And the greatest threat that most people are going to probably have when they hear this is they're going to go, well, that seems simple. And you're going to go, well, yeah, it is fucking simple, but that's where the power is, because if we complicated the shit out of it, chances
it's not
are...
going to work.
Exactly. So let's break it down. Break down the debrief.
Debriefing, as you said, it's simple as a concept, but the biggest challenge is the forum and the culture that you have to create to allow it to work.
Yeah, right. This is important.
And we call it, in the context of our Flex methodology, the nameless and rankless environment.
Love that.
It's similar to Chatham House rules.
Check the ego at the door.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't matter who you are in the organisation, whether you're Kerwin or a new graduate in that room. We're only doing a factual analysis of the real world.
Yeah.
There's no opinions. It's not subjective. It's not someone's idea. It's all seated in truth and reality. So the first thing we do is we have to create the gap. What is it? And to create a gap, you need to have an objective, and then you need to have a result. So the first step of debriefing is, what is my result?
So we're reverse engineering this, because normally you'd start with, okay, how do we plan and how do we execute, and then how do we debrief? But we're reversing this just for people playing at home, so they've got a bigger picture here.
Well, it's interesting because most people, when they walk into their first planning session, they probably already have done something.
Yep.
They're probably already in a business.
Boom, yeah.
Or if they're in a startup, they have a reason as to why they've started up.
Yep.
So a debrief is the fact check. The debrief is where do we want to be? Why are we doing this? Where have we been?
Yep.
And that starts the conversation about building the plan. Well, one thing when I'm coaching and mentoring in a business that I always see, it's every month the leadership walks in and they just come up with 3 brand new objectives, or just random objectives of some wacky idea. And the whole organisation starts to, just as they got settled into the old plan, they weave over to the next plan. And the point of debriefing is to always keep you on the path.
Yep.
And the path moves and it meanders, but we're on the path.
Yep.
So everyone's aligned. We don't waste time people trying to figure out what the hell's going on. But
it also helps us deal with the importance of adaptation and change, because
absolutely,
we're on the path.
That's the only thing that's constant.
Exactly. And whether you're in the military and you've got bombs going off, or you're in business and you've got fires that are going on, it happens. Like,
every day you wake up in the morning, your business is potentially going out of business.
Yeah.
You don't know what's out there. You can't, but you need to be able to be responsive, but you cannot be responsive unless you're proactive.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's have a think about that. So nameless and rankless is hard to do because people don't like talking about failure.
Yeah.
Let's just face that.
Or they don't like owning failure. But a lot of people like blaming people.
That's what we call the excuse matrix.
Yep.
So what happened in our world was, back in the 60s, there was always an excuse matrix. There's always a reason an aircraft was shot down. It was never the pilot.
Yeah, right.
It was the other aircraft or better technology. It was always something else. Except for one squadron. And one squadron back in the Vietnam War, they had they call it kill ratios. People get a bit sensitive about using that, but that's fundamentally what the aircraft exists for. So at the time in Vietnam, there was a 2-to-1 kill ratio with the Americans, and one squadron had a 14-to-1 kill ratio. And it was that squadron that they discovered after every mission, the pilots took accountability for their own performance, and they discussed it in front of their peer group.
Oh, I love it.
And that was the basis of Top Gun, and Top Gun was developed on the back of that ethos.
Yeah, right.
So that's one of 2 facts in the movie. So when we sit down, and what's really challenging inside an organisation when they start debrief, it's easy for a fighter pilot because we learn from our first mission.
Yep.
Debriefing's important. So we're always debriefing little tiny things. So it never kind of gets big, right? So we manage it. But when you debrief the first time inside an organisation, there's generally a lot of tension, a lot of failures that have built up over time, and it's very hard to break through that in the first debrief. So the only way we can do that is to start with a fact. And the fact is, we've been trying to do something for 6 months. What is it? How are we going? And then the second step in the debriefing process is, well, why is that the result? We call it the reason. It's the 3 R's to debriefing. What's my result?
Yep.
What's my reason for that result? And what's my response going to be? And when we do a reason or a root cause analysis, everyone knows that word, what we find, and where we again make another mistake, people are very good at picking the problems of everyone else. People are very good at identifying what everyone's done wrong. And in this environment, and when we facilitate our first few debriefs, what we find is people laugh off their mistake. Or if someone's identified as making having a poor performing sales target or struggling for some specific reason, when we get them to raise their hand and go, okay, why were you off target? You'll get the derision of the entire organisation for that individual. And right there, you have lost 40% of your performance inside the organisation just from that one giggle.
Yeah.
That one little piece of derision for that individual. So we spend a lot of time just going, okay, great.
What does the word derision mean?
Bad. You feel bad.
Okay.
Derided.
Okay.
It's a bad word.
Okay. It's like fuck, but different. It's a bit smart.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't read books. So to create the environment where people feel comfortable, we have to start with the truth.
Yeah, right.
And a root cause analysis is just finding one thing and drilling all the way down until we can drill down no more, until we get a granular piece of factual information as to why something didn't work. And you know what? You know what's really great about debriefing? That can be wrong. Even if our debrief and we come up with the wrong reason, we'll figure it out tomorrow because we're going to debrief again, right? So we take that reason and then we say, well, if that's the reason why I'm not achieving the level of performance I want, what can I do? What can I do tomorrow to
What's my response?
What's my response going to be?
Right.
Who's going to do what by when? Not the team's response, not the organizational response. What is my response? Because inside a debrief, it's all about saying, I made the mistake, I fess up to it, and I'm going to fix it. It's that level of accountability. So we take that reason, we create a response, and then we go plug that into our plan, and we commit to do it the very next day. We execute that response. And sometimes in an organisation, we're not sure.
How critical is speed of implementation in this context?
It's critical. You need to implement your response from a debrief virtually the very next day.
Yeah, right.
Because if you don't, it just, like all information in life, it just has an expiry date. We're filling the bucket every single day with stuff off the internet. And so we need to go out there. But more importantly, we need to record it. We need to record the date at which this response is going to be implemented and when we're going to check to see how it's traveling. So when you start debriefing, and as you're talking about, you debrief as an organisation, every day you debrief a month as a larger group. For me, I would have debriefed 6-7 times today already just on the way to your office. It's just a mindset.
Yeah.
Because you always make mistakes. Like it's fundamental to being human.
You're 100% right. I literally live my entire life in a debrief.
Yep.
Like, okay, what's my result? Why did I get there? Okay, what's my response? Oh God, that is literally my view of the. And of all the information out there on all the tricks, tips, and trade to be a successful person, I think the skill of debrief is the most fundamental. I would agree. It's right up there, definitely. Okay, so we've got the result. We've got to look at the result, nameless, rankless. There is no blame. We just got to look at what the facts at a granular level. Let's dig deep down.
And that is hard.
It is.
It is hard. We love the shopping list of, we need to communicate more. We need to be better with our customers. We need to...
Because I'm sure you hear that all the time. People have their values on the wall, but then you get inside the organisation like, guys, I'm not sure if you read what's actually up there.
Yeah, we call it the what matrix.
Yeah.
Here's what we did. Here's what we need to do. But no one ever goes into the detail of, well, how are we going to do that then?
Yeah, right.
What is the drain on resources?
Yep.
And I would say 99% of the time I walk into an organisation for the very first time and build a plan. By the end of the day, everyone says, wow, I can't believe how optimistic we were. We were so unrealistic in what we had set ourselves to do. And when they walk away, they go, right, let's just do one thing. Let's get one thing done in the next 3 months. And it's that degree of penetration that you get from a debrief.
Yeah, right. So result, reason, and this is oftentimes it brings up the emotion and again, I think this is one of the biggest challenges for people is responsibility, and it should almost be like a secondary R. Like, what was the result? What was the response? Responsibility, and that attachment of letting go of that responsibility.
Absolutely.
How do you go through that in an environment where you've got, because again, emotion goes up, intelligence goes down. We haven't hit what we want to do, but we need to talk about it. How do you navigate in situations, because people might be listening and going, well, this sounds great, but my manager's a dick, okay? Or my boss is a dick, or my team, I just ended up with a team that I acquired along the way, and they're a bunch of odd objects in different shapes, and how do I bring this together in a way and use how do I inject a communication strategy to actually do this well? Because
before debriefing, it's all subjective. John's a dick.
Yeah, he is.
But when you debrief, what you highlight is actually poor performance. So we go from having a subjective opinion of someone to a factual matrix of non-performance for that individual. And when you debrief, you do end up down at the heavy hitting items inside an organisation. Was it a leadership failure? Is it the organisation itself? Is it communication? Are we even able to communicate a high level strategy to the lowest level of the organisation? Is it lack of knowledge, experience, discipline? So we hit some raw nerves when we do debriefing. And a good leadership team and a good organisation will subsequently off that build a plan to knock each one of those down. And remember, importantly, in a debrief, it's not about walking away with 50 things that we did wrong.
Yeah.
That is easy. And the only person that feels good after that is the person who highlighted all the problems and walks away completely unaware of their own shortcomings. Yeah. It's just walking away with one or two, no more than 3 things, actions that you can do the next day. That is the skill. And in our world, the world I came from in fighter pilots, the best fighter pilot isn't the guy or the girl that flies the jet the best. It's the fighter pilot that can run the best debrief.
Yeah, right.
Because that person gets the most benefit for everyone in the room, not just for themselves. And you know what? It just so happens that the best fighter pilot debriefers, they're also the best pilots.
Isn't that interesting? Okay. So we're now looking at response. You're saying we're not looking for a list of 50 things. We're only looking for a list of 3 things max.
That's right.
And again, this
that
is
a human can do.
Yeah.
A human has to be able to do this.
Right.
Not a machine.
Yeah.
The human interfacing to the machine has to do it. Again, it's particularly with sales and tracking sales and development of sales, a lot of the feedback we get is, we need to figure out how to use a CRM better. Well, who does? Who's going to figure that out? Who's going to run the training program? Who's taking point? Define what making the CRM works better looks like. And that's where you hit the stumbling blocks, because people don't know. And they've entered a multi-million-dollar contract for a CRM system that they're not even sure what the scope of it is in the first place. So again, when else do you use debriefing? When you're looking at entering into a large contract with someone. When you're dealing with a customer, ask them, what's your objective? What's your result? What's the gap in performance? What's the reason for that gap? If you can't talk or have a conversation with somebody and you're introverted, it's the perfect platform to just ask someone all about themselves. And at the end of the day, if they're unable to articulate what their objective is relative to their result, and you can help them with that, you've given them value beyond the service and product that you're trying to sell to them.
So let's maybe work backwards. Okay,
I keep tangenting you off the response thing, don't I?
That's fucking great, mate. It's great. But I want to get, because there are probably some people out there going, this is fantastic. I can see, there was a result I was going for, didn't achieve it. Okay, I can now drive in and drill into the reasons why, and I understand the basic philosophy, nameless, rankless, blameless. We're going to check how we get to the door. We're going to leave emotion out of it, and let's just look at the facts. We're going to try and keep this as unemotional as possible. Then we're going to look at the response. What is the 1 to 3 actions that we're going to take? Actually, before we go off that, the responses, can they be as simple as a task, and can they be as maybe more complex as a priority? Meaning, is it something in some cases we're looking that can be executed in a day?
Correct. Yes.
Or is it something that we might be looking at as a bigger project that comes out of it that may take a week, a month, or 3 months to actually?
We can drill down that a little bit if you like.
Yeah, please.
So when we debrief, there's really only 4 things that we can fix: our personal execution.
Yep.
Our communication. So, am I riding a bike and I'm part of a triathlon team and I'm actually should be the runner, but no one told me that? The plan itself.
In Jim Collins' language, are you in the right seat on the bus?
Correct.
Yep.
Is it? I did read Jim Collins. I read that book.
So that's the one.
Just the one. So in my personal execution, because we can fix that tomorrow. That's a decision.
Yep.
I'm overweight. I'm going to eat 3 meals instead of 4. Right. I'm going to enlist on a new weight loss program. I'm going to focus on diet. Then I'm going to focus on exercise. So we've got the big picture, the high definition destination. I would like to be less weighty. So that's a key element, that key overarching objective, and I can fix that just by the way I behave, and that's the hardest thing. Like, it's all your personal execution is ultimately 85% of the time the reason why you're not getting anywhere. Okay, so let's just say we've trained really hard, we've worked out, everything's going fantastic for us, but something's still not happening. Then we check our communication with ourselves, with the team. Now, people think communication is about, I've got a strategy and I'm going to tell everyone about it. Communication is getting somewhere in life as well. If you want to get somewhere in life, and one thing I've never been shy of is I've wanted to be a fighter pilot when I was a kid. So I asked everyone around me. I rang up fighter bases. I couldn't tell enough people that that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah, right.
And as a result of that, I got a lot of information, guidance, and assistance that helped the pathway to my destination sort of open up. So that's why communication is so important. But I had a plan. I knew what I wanted, and the plan is the third part of the debrief. So when we ask ourselves, well, we're doing everything right. We know exactly what we need to do, but something's still not working. And this is now where we're starting to get into a weeks-long corrective process, where we start to change our objectives. We change the measurable. So we're being too overconfident right now. And as you know, every human's born with the overconfident chip. So
overestimate ourselves in the short term, underestimate ourselves in the long term.
So by and large, whatever we set out to do, just cut it by 30%, and you're probably starting to get in the ballpark. So we've got to have that little bit of correction. Our plans are generally, we're optimistic in what we can achieve. So we adjust that now. So if we're doing the right thing now, we've got a good plan that's communicated well, and we're still not getting to our destination, then that's when we can finally blame the organisation. Funny thing is though, as the organisation is an organism of the individuals inside it, once we get our personal execution right, we communicate good plans to each other, the organisation just kind of sorts itself out. So you never actually end up there.
That's almost like a list of ingredients for a culture. Like when you think about it, because this is what makes us exceptional at what we do, is we don't use this as an event-based strategy, because obviously we combine what you've taught us with many of the things that we've learned throughout the last 20 years in business, but we don't do this as, oh shit, maybe we're not having a good day, or we're not having a good month, not having a good quarter, or we didn't have a good year, let's sit down and do this. Like for us, and I think this is the difference, like when you look at other disciplines, it becomes a way of life, doesn't it? You either do this as a way of life. There is no part-time.
No, it's an existence.
Yeah,
it is, and the beauty of debriefing is,
and that's what a culture is. A culture is where you behave in a particular way that is just considered normal. Yeah. And to us, this is normal. I'm not fucking kidding here. We have sometimes recruited people in here, and in their first week, they're like, we've had people say there is something wrong with the people in this company. I'm fine. I'm completely normal, but you guys, you're all fucking weird.
It happens, and and that's probably something that a lot of people say about me as well.
You are fucking weird.
You're a weird guy, right? Yeah. And this is where John the Dick that we are talking about before.
Oh, he's such a dick.
This is where he ends up going somewhere else.
Yeah.
So if you create the culture of debriefing,
boom,
the right people gravitate to your organisation who want the accountability, who want the openness.
Yeah.
And the people that aren't comfortable and they've made a living out of,
they deselect.
Out of being a cloud of confusion, they'll go and gravitate to the organisation where those toxic cultures exist.
Yeah.
You raised a good point about culture. If you give me anything inside your organisation that you want to fix, you give me a target, a goal, the first thing I'll say is, how did your debrief go? What did you discover in a debrief? And then 70% of companies will say, what's a debrief? So it's not hard. It is not hard to get to your destination, but you just have to be absolutely, I don't use the word discipline because people get scared by that word, right? You just have to be in the habit of going through a debriefing process. I'm 8 weeks into a detox now, where I'm looking at, with my health issues, just trying something new.
Yep.
So for me, it's probably the fourth thing I've tried new about managing my health. So I can walk into a doctor's surgery and talk to them about my conditions and have more general knowledge about my condition now than the doctor, which means I get more value from the doctor because he can look with his expertise and subject matter expert, and we can have a proper conversation, which is around a debrief as to my health.
Yeah, right.
I avoided having my intestines removed, or a big portion of my intestines removed, because I was able to debrief with a surgeon properly as to my symptoms, my conditions, the treatment. I Googled like a maniac. I found as much as I could. And between us, we discovered that perhaps we can avoid surgery. And I still have my insides intact today after a 5-day stay in hospital.
And I love your guts, mate. I do love your guts. So let's maybe just go.
As you said, to be successful, it takes guts. So I couldn't lose those.
Mate, you can't take your guts away. Honestly, you'd be gutless. Come on. That was really funny. I have to say, it was the funniest thing I've said for at least a year. Thanks, Timmy. So let's go back now to, okay, we've now learnt the debriefing process. It's incredibly powerful. It has to become a way of life. It has to become a part of who you are. If you want to succeed, because you may not want to succeed at the highest level. Timmy, there are a lot of people out there who don't want to succeed at the highest level.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No, you want to be average. That's fine.
You're going to be happy and content.
Because we need average people to help us stand out. But what I'm curious to know is, like, how do you then forward plan? Okay, right, I've gone through the debriefing process. I've now got my responses, but I want to be better at setting the objective. Like, do you have any insights, tips, hints, process that you can say, well, this is a good way to plan if you're going to do it?
Less is more.
Yep.
Is a simple philosophy. When you're planning, do as little as possible. But also,
I really like the sound of that. That's sexy as hell. Yeah, carry on.
And so when we're excited, and it's actually a trait that is possibly more damaging to entrepreneurs and more damaging to high energy people, is typically you take on more than your team can do. And you might document it, you might follow all the processes and procedures, but you find yourself, running through a field of snowflakes rather than catching the snowball.
Yeah, right.
So the ability to just in great detail plan out every single key objective, but also think in terms of what is the objective? How do I define it at this level of the organization where everyone has input? And then how do I push that down so the next person can create their objective to align to mine, and their team can create an objective to align to theirs. So you create this full alignment from your strategic intent and your vision all the way down into your day-to-day activities. And if you're creating a plan where someone has to do 8 different things every single day from the day before, you're not setting them up for success either. So it's a way of helping you create a standard way in which to do your business, because the more standard, we seek invigoration in the day. We want to do exciting things. We want to go out there and be an individual. But if you don't have standards, you have chaos. And a standard is getting 70% of your work just ironed out. And that 30% we leave you allows you to be incredibly creative and innovative. But you won't be creative and innovative without the debrief. So we take all that information, and that's where we put it into this plan, and we create these objectives, because the objective is probably wrong. That first target we didn't measure it. And one of the issues inside business is there's a disconnect between leaders and strategic intent and doers and stuff that needs to get done. So to bridge that gap, we practice open planning. And open planning is, well, if you're a leader and you have to deliver something strategic, everyone who's involved in doing the work needs to be in the room with you building the plan. And organizations, when I talk about that, they say, but everyone's busy.
And
I don't have time.
And I don't want their input. I just want to tell them what to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
how would they know what I want them to do? How can they tell me what I need to, what I know?
Any culture any culture in an organization that relies on telling people what to do is doomed to fail.
Yeah.
And an organization that, how's this? With this process, you create an environment where people can figure out on your behalf what you need to do because they're empowered. And because they own the solution, they're going to come to work more. They're going to be more invigorated. They're going to debrief. They're going to learn. And all of a sudden, we go from having these boring workplaces where well-being is a beanbag in the corner to being where well-being is getting things done, achieving things, being part of a harmonious team where doesn't matter what I say, my contribution is valued. I'm not derided.
You know what? You nailed something there. High performance is actually high performance is healthy because when you perform at a high level and you are cracking the shit out of life and you're succeeding in life, you're succeeding in health, you're succeeding in whatever your pursuits are, you're more happy.
You're bulletproof.
Exactly.
You're actually...
You are unstoppable.
You have a force field around you.
Yeah.
And nothing gets you down.
Yeah.
Nothing is insurmountable. Once you learn to create the achievable objective in life...
That's the key, isn't it? Yeah.
It's cool.
So for those of you playing at home, stop overestimating yourself in the short term and stop underestimating yourself in the long term. And again, you've only got to look at the statistics in business. You know, most businesses to take from scratch to go to $1 million takes on average 7 to 10 years. But 1.8% survive that 10-year mark. And it's not because and this is what I've learned. If hard work was a key to success, we'd see a lot more successful entrepreneurs out there. Hard work has nothing to do with it, because most people know how to work hard, but it's how do you work strategic, and how do you execute at a tactical level. But also, how do you create the habit and the discipline? Because you mentioned that before. This has got to become a habit. You don't like the word discipline. I fucking love the word discipline.
I love the word discipline.
Yeah.
Just people I deal with don't like it.
Fuck them. I'm more interested in people understanding, and again, taking this from the military context and from you've taken this into the professional context. The more discipline we have around creating habits, the freer we become.
Absolutely.
Because the biggest challenge that I've seen, and you could probably experience yourself, is most people resist effort. And the reason they resist effort is because effort requires energy, and it's harder than things that are effortless. And the things that are effortless are the things that we once did over and over and over again that required effort to a point where they no longer required effort because it was automatic.
You're brushing your teeth.
I still find that very difficult.
Yeah. All right. You need to debrief.
But it's true.
But there are habits: showering, brushing teeth, having breakfast. Like we all have habits, whether we like it or not. We love a program. We love to do things the same all the time. So this is just
the bad habits take just as long as to form as the good habits.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's just consciousness. Yeah. But again, debriefing brings these things into consciousness. They go from being a fog. We missed a very important concept around this whole process, and that's situational awareness. Like I
was just about to bring that up.
That is the fundamental outcome we're trying to achieve here, and we've got to go from a world where information is all pervasive to the right info at the right time to empower decisions. The decisions equal actions, and the actions equal that effect that the leader or the team is trying to achieve. And situational awareness is that clarity. So most people don't live with clarity. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. If you're wandering around the street with your phone in your face, you do not have clarity. So how do we create clarity? Because with clarity comes performance. With clarity comes effortlessness. And it's funny, isn't it? Because what I find is the more effortless and proceduralized we make things, people feel like they've got nothing to do anymore. And if I've got nothing to do, what do I need? I'm going to do myself out of a job. It's quite fascinating that how uncomfortable people are when they create these environments.
Oh, it's so true. People, and that's a reason why people are uncomfortable with creating efficiency. Like you've nailed it right there. People resist efficiency because in some level they think it's self-sabotage. Well, if I make it more efficient, then they may not need me anymore.
Absolutely. And it's human nature. Even for me, even me knowing, like I know this stuff back to front. It's my culture. It's in my DNA. But I still have to use it to overcome my humanness. Like I still, I still have this destructive element to myself. I still try and take off more than I bite off more than I can chew. I still do things that when I'm thinking and doing them, I know it's not the right thing to do. And that's the other great thing that for me means I think, are my actions right now increasing my situational awareness or decreasing? And that for me is my trigger
I love that.
To say stop. Just go back to it, debrief. And that's where the debriefing, that's how often I derail myself 6, 7, 8 times a day. So I debrief to get the clarity back. It's an example's driving here today in you moved office. So for me, my ingrained behavior is get in the car and drive to the old office. But as I'm doing that, I'm remembering a conversation we had in your moving office. So all of a sudden, I've lost my situational awareness. So I stop. I just stop, and I go, right. I've lost. What am I trying to do? The objective here is to get to Kern's office, right? What is the result? I don't know. I'm all over the shop. So what am I going to do? What is the reason I'm all over the shop? Well, I've just gone from one meeting to another meeting. I'm hurrying. I'm jamming too much into my day. My response is 5-minute shutdown. Just aircon in the car. 5-minute shutdown. Go back through my emails, make a phone call. Have you moved office? Yes, I moved office. Reprogram the GPS, shift the meeting half an hour. Boom, got my situational awareness back. I'm here, I'm productive for half an hour working before the meeting, and I'm full of energy and engaged and able to have a conversation with you. Because I gave myself, I had the awareness I'd lost my situational awareness.
Right. It's incredible how self-awareness is making almost a comeback in so many different areas. Because I actually believe once upon a time there was we were a very evolved species of self-aware human beings, and then over time...
Yeah, they drew us on the pyramids.
Yeah, exactly, right? But it's almost like it's become self-awareness is becoming sexy. Situational awareness is becoming, and again, I hear this discussed with a lot of intensity, a lot of focus when working with the boys and the Navy SEALs and the European Special Forces, is the importance of situational, because without it, you're screwed. And the things that affect situational awareness, which is exactly what you pointed to on the way over here, stress and emotion. So have you got any, just as we wrap up here, like I'm curious to know, because this plan is great. This debriefing process is bulletproof. I know it is. We live it. But what I'm curious to know is, how do we manage the things that in some cases we can't manage? Because sometimes there's a stress trigger. Sometimes there's an emotional trigger. Emotions released, we filter out so much more information. We don't see the bigger picture. Stress is released, we lose 30 to 50% of our IQ in like 7 minutes. So do you have some military grade strategies to help people, maintain high levels of composure in high risk situations? Not necessarily where people are trying to shoot you out of the sky, but fuck me, if you can manage the stress of being shot out of the sky, managing a bad day in your business is going to be a piece of cake.
What's the one thing that makes everyone feel good? If there's one thing why people buy a lotto ticket, why people do all of these unlikely outcome events, if there's one thing that reverses all of those symptoms, reduces the amount of stress, is hope. If you create hope in any situation, it's an immediately calming effect. That's positive psychology. We release the endorphins, we release all of these chemicals, and debriefing is a tool that ends up with a response. And what is a response in another form? It's hope. It's something I can do. It's a tangible action I can take from a shitty situation and do it, and immediately you feel better. We say in the fighter pilot world, I keep saying our world, I haven't done it for 12 years, but the world I came from, we would say the debrief is more important than the mission. And if we didn't fly a mission for whatever reason, we would debrief it as if we had and still learn something. That's how powerful the debrief is and how important it is to us. So in an environment where you're stressed, there's a high level of tension, and we have to go into a room with the team first, debrief yourself. Sit down and try and discover why you are stressed. You are stressed because your gap in performance is big. Why is the gap big? What's my reason? Ask yourself. And we have a handy little reference card to help people drill down to that. And then once you do that and you come up with your response, and you're going into a nameless, rankless debrief anyway, you'll decompress the situation. So if something happens outside your control, we call that a contingency, or what if there's nothing you can do about it. What you do have control over is how quickly you recover, how quickly you get back on the horse and keep going. And if you debrief, that accelerates that process. I mean, debriefing has been demonstrated scientifically to improve performance 38%. That gives everyone 60 days a year in their back pocket.
Boom.
So if you're saying it takes 7 years to grow a business, well, this is going to shave 2 years off that process. Yep. That's how powerful it is.
That's potent stuff. And for those people who want to find out more about what you do, because obviously you do this as a training, and the training is immersive.
I do it as a passion. It's actually
it's clearly a passion.
This is my hobby.
We brought you in not just into our organisation, we brought you in to work within the organisations of our clients, and it's quite an immersive experience. Like, you actually get us to do, battle, like actual mission
plan a mission,
execute missions.
Don't really blow something. Pretend to. Yeah.
We wanted to. He freaked out when we pulled out the hand grenades. But you get the people to execute. You have air raids. You produce stress. Like, you actually produce an environment where that is similar to the real world. So,
and it goes to answer your question: how do you deal with stress? So unless we put people in that
exposure
stressful environment and they feel task saturated and they feel that tension and their heart rate go up, they won't learn from the debrief afterwards.
Yeah.
And after the debrief, everyone's relaxed.
Yeah.
Everyone's laughing. We're revisiting the mission. We're having little debriefs off to the side.
Gherkins everywhere.
Yeah, gherkins left, right, and centre. More gouge.
Yeah.
So I think that's the key. It's kind of the magic formula to resolve anything inside your organisation, and you can't do it enough. And every single debrief that the organisations I work, and if I come in and facilitate a debrief, it's actually a day of excitement in the fortnightly calendar. Like, people, they get excited about, hey, boo, and they're all excited, and they know that in that 45 minutes to an hour, they're actually going to learn something, take it away, and then that gives them something to do for the next week.
So you've written a book. What's it called?
On Time, on Target.
On Time, on Target. And you have a training. How can people find out more about the book, more about the training? Where do they go?
Google Afterburner Australia. That's all they need to do. It's not all.
He's that cool. He doesn't even need a business card. Just say Google Afterburner.
Google Afterburner Australia.
Yep.
And the beauty of this process, it's whilst I've employed it in business for 12 years, I've got 10 other fighter pilots, real ones who are flying right now,
Yep.
who come in and share that experience. And for me, it's a good audit as well.
Yep.
So to make sure what I'm talking about in the business
Keeps you current.
context is
Yep.
definitely where the team still is. So, and we run anything from...
And I love that because you even theme the rooms. You bring in fucking parachutes.
Everyone loves a silk parachute.
Yeah,
I
the
mean,
silk parachutes. You come in your aviation gear. Like it's a real experience.
You don't learn if there's no experience attached to it. I mean, most of us learn from bad experiences. We want people to learn from a fun experience, and in an environment that they never really see, and just have to reinforce. It's not Top Gun.
Yep.
And see what real fighter pilots do.
Yep.
Where else does in an organisation invest $10 million in someone to have a basic level of competency, where there's only 60 of them in the whole country that operate billions of dollars worth of equipment day in, day out, have to deliver to a deadline within 5 seconds every single day? It just doesn't exist. That environment does not exist. And therefore, what we can do is learn a lot of lessons from that environment, bring it into normal world, Civvy Street, as we call it, and it just works.
$1 million man's got nothing on you. You 10x his ass. He's the $10 million man. Ladies and gentlemen, Christian Boo. I'm just going to say Christian Boo. Bacousis.
That's where you get your cool call signs from. No one else could pronounce it either.
No shit. Christian.
Boo. That's it.
Boo. It's an absolute pleasure. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Mate, that was great.
Thank you.
Good stuff.
There you have it, guys. Thanks for tuning in to Unstoppable with me, your host, Kerwin Ray. And do me a favor, don't forget to drop me a review on iTunes. Would love to hear what you think. I love reading what you guys have to say. And your reviews make sure we keep creating killer content just like this. If you want to stay up to date with me and all my movements, please jump onto the website, kerwinray.com. And also check us out on social media at Kerwin Ray.